All right, great. We're live. You know, it's not every day that the government tells you that they hate you, especially in such a nice way that Governor Healy told you today. Uh, it, Important press conference at the State House with Governor Healy. I have some notes. Let's get into it. So the spin today was that we are tapped out at 7,500 families statewide, which is going to be somewhere close to 25,000 people, basically what Lieutenant Governor Driscoll called a small city. And basically, the message is we're tapped out with the current system at 7,500 families, which is basically double what we had last year. In fact, today, for the first time, I believe ever, according to the government report, we just went over 7,000 families, 7,002 families as of Monday, October 16th, 2023. We had been under 7,000. I think this is the first time we've broken the 7,000 family number. Governor Healy is expecting that we'll be at capacity, so to speak, come the end of the month, which is just less than 2 weeks today. So understand that when she says we're at capacity at 7,500, she's basically admitting and promoting the fact that she wants the program to stay at that number forever, that $575 million a program is now going to become, for the foreseeable future, a permanent part of the state budget. She is not talking about ways to reduce the program. Understand, with any one of these press conferences, you always have to pay attention to what is not said, what is not said. And what was not said today was, how are we going to reduce the size of the program? Never did that come up. And certainly the media didn't do any thing to prompt that question, for sure. We're not talking about preserving the size of the program. We're talking about, reducing the size of a program. We're talking about preserving it at its current bloated level of $575 million a year, 7,500 families, of which at least half aren't actually citizens of the United States and or Massachusetts. It's an extraordinary way to kind of just poke you in the eye as a taxpayer and as a citizen here in Massachusetts. In fact, the governor said quite clearly that she was very, very happy to see more immigrants come to Massachusetts if only the federal government would pay for them. And it's quite clear that if the federal government paid for it, she's all for it. She will not amend or repeal the so-called right to shelter law in Massachusetts, which again is not a right to shelter. There's nothing enshrined in the Constitution, or it's not an entitlement. It is just simply a basic general law, which the legislature and the governor could change if they wanted to. They don't want to. Unlike New York City, which is under a consent decree by court order, Massachusetts is not under any consent decree by court order. In Massachusetts, the state legislature, the governor could change this tomorrow. Instead, basically, they're saying, no, we're going to put a cap on the housing number at 575, which also tells me basically she's made a deal with Ron Mariano and the Senate as well that says, hey, give me the extra money, the extra $250 million that I asked for. I promise I won't ask for any much more this year, or at least this fiscal year. So here she is here. Let's bring this up on the screen. Here she is here explaining that she's not going to change the so-called right to shelter law, and that she would be happy to have more immigrants in Massachusetts if only the federal government paid for it. Because, of course, when the federal government pays for it, well, that's free money, right? All right, here she is.
Maya, I want to be very clear with the public. We are not ending the right to shelter law. We will comply with the right to shelter law. That said, we are reaching capacity, which is why it's all the more important that we're able to support people exiting shelter and also able to triage the families who are coming in. As I say, that is something where I mentioned how we're going to be triaging families, but we need help from the federal government. That's why I asked again this morning for help from the federal government in opening a congregate site here in Massachusetts.
Yeah, because that's what we need. We need a federally government subsidized program, a congregate site, a giant illegal immigrant city, so to speak. That's what we need in Massachusetts.
Continue to look to service providers and others who are out there. Many have stepped forward and done incredible things, but we want to be really clear with the public about the capacity that we are reaching and soon to exceed.
Notice how she's not talking about how to reduce the number. She's just saying, hey, we're going to cap it at 7,500, which is an extraordinary number of people. As Driscoll said, a small city. All right, so enough of that. When we talk about what is she talking about when she says triage? Effectively, what she wants to do is run a program where the people that are coming into the program get out of the program quicker. Not reducing the total size of the program, no, but expediting the speed by which people are in the program. Remember, people are in the program for an average of 14 months for a price tag of $65,000 on average per family. And when she talks about triage, she talks about, and this is where the government really hates working class people, and this I apply to the Uniparty, both Democrats and Republicans. What they're talking about is job training. To get as much job training out to the newly arrived immigrants so that they can go out and compete against working class Americans. So if you're a working class American citizen, like you're a landscaper or you work at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever you happen to do, you are now going to have to compete against thousands and thousands of immigrants that have just arrived on our shores, asylum seekers. Now, they're really here for economic reasons, right? They're almost all of them, right? They're almost all here for economic reasons. That's why they're here. You go ask them. I actually have asked people that have crossed the border and said, why'd you come? Economy, jobs, work. I mean, they tell you right there. I mean, you can see this anywhere on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. If you want to see those videos, almost the last one, they all say job, work, money. They are now going to be expedited through the program. They are going to get job training through the program. They're going to be moved through this $7,500 family cap program, or higher if the feds pay for it, to compete against working class people in Massachusetts. That's how much your government hates you. It's hard to believe this. First off, we've already seen two things against working class, against every American, actually, and that's the decline of real wages across the country since inflation kicked in January of 2021. I'm sure that that's a complete coincidence about when inflation started, because I also believe that there was a change of administrations in January 2021. I'm sure that's just a complete coincidence. But since then, as inflation's gone up, your real wages have declined. And now, especially if you're a working class person and you're basically working a low wage job, you are now going to have to compete against illegal immigrants that are getting trained to compete against you by the government itself. I mean, it doesn't get more nefarious than that. Here's an interesting story from WBUR that came out today. As state rents 3,000 in hotel and motel rooms for family shelters, some longtime occupants end up displaced. So this is Brenda Banville, who apparently consented to be interviewed for this BUR article. She sleeps in a McDonald's parking lot. She used to have a motel. She used to be able to afford a motel. But now that more than 3,000 homeless families live in those rented rooms, what do you think? Experts say that this has disrupted certain motel markets and sent prices up. So, right, some of those rate hikes are because the hotel owners are capitalizing on the state's desperate need for rooms. Other price increases are simply because the overall supplies of rooms has dropped. Why do you think the overall supply has dropped? Because because the government's locked them up. What is that story from the hotel out in Taunton? The hotel in Taunton, read this out of the Rhode Island news source. They signed a potentially 9-year contract to house illegal immigrants at the hotel in Taunton. And I bet you, and these are self-extending contracts, so it may or may not go that long, but it has the potential to go that long. That gives you an idea of the framework of what the government's thinking about in terms of this program. So I don't know how many Massachusetts citizens are like Brenda Banville out there that got bumped out of their semi-affordable housing, well, even if it was a motel for illegal immigrants, but I think there's a lot. And people like Brenda now probably working a low wage job at McDonald's or something like that. Now she has to compete against these folks that bumped her out of her own housing situation. I think one of the other things that wasn't said today was the media. Completely complicit, right? Completely and absolutely complicit. Did they ever once ask Governor Healey, will you ask President Biden to close the border? They are completely in the tank. They never asked that question. How can you have this press conference and not call on the governor to ask the president to close the border? Because it's Massachusetts, and that's what the media is all about, right? They're just there to lap it up, and they don't understand what the governor just told them because she's so nice about it, right? But the governor just told them that this $575 million program is now basically a permanent fixture. I think the Mass and Cass article is, or analogy, I should say, is apt. Whenever the government gets a lot of heat, and certainly this program has gotten a lot of heat in the last couple of weeks, right? It's gone way up on the radar screen. Whenever there's a lot of heat, just like at Mass and Cass, Mayor Wu comes out and says, we're going to clean it up like she did this spring, right? She said you're going to clean up Mass and Cass this spring. Of course, it was a soft cleanup because at that cleanup, and this is well documented in the media, at the cleanup, if you didn't want to move your tent, then you got to stay. and literally it says, if they refuse, they refuse. And therefore, the government really didn't have the will to do what was necessary to clean up Mass and Cass. And what do you think it looks like now? It's back to the same thing it was always before, an open-air drug market, open-air drug use. So I'm just going to ask you this question, because certainly nobody in the media asked this question today. If the border is going to remain open, which it is under the Biden administration, so we're still going to get more immigrants. Where are they going to go if the state is not going to put them into hotels? I'm going to tell you where they're going to go. We've already seen this answer in other places, Chicago, El Paso, and we've seen it actually here in Massachusetts. They're going to be sleeping at Boston Medical Center. They're going to be sleeping at Logan Airport. They're going to be sleeping at your local police station. That's where they're going to go. And until we're willing to close the border to stop the root cause, Kamala Harris, or however you say your first name, until we have the will to do that, anything the governor announces is just surely window dressing, lipstick on a pig, in a way. All right, I'm John F. Gately. Thanks so much for watching. You can get me at johnfgately.substack.com. Have a great day. Bye-bye.